Hey, good morning, everybody. Warm enough? Well, first of all, I really want to say thank you. Welcome. My name is Ali Noorani. I'm the Executive Director of the National Immigration Forum, and we're just thrilled to welcome Bibles, badges, and business from across America to Washington, D.C. to advocate for immigration reform. So thank you. Today is an incredibly important day. It is the first day of floor debate on Senate Bill 744. Over the last few days, there's been a motion to proceed, there's been a cloture vote, there's been the beginning of a conversation on the U.S. Senate floor. But today, the amendment process starts. Today is when, let's just be honest, things get real. And that's why it's so important that you're here. Because you are the faith, the law enforcement, and the business leadership in districts across the country who can have that conversation with your member of Congress so that he or she realizes that there is a different kind of support for immigration reform. There is a different kind of need for immigration reform, and that's based on who we are as a country, that's based on the needs of our economy, and that's based on the needs of our nation's security. And that's why it's just absolutely wonderful to have everybody here. And I know there are people here from Utah and Idaho and Mississippi and North Carolina and Alabama and Colorado and Los Angeles. So everybody here has made an incredible sacrifice to get here today, and it's just an incredible moment in time to not necessarily make history, but to make the future. Because that's what we're here today to do, is to make a future where our immigration system serves the needs of our country. So let's get started. We have an amazing set of speakers, and we have really a wonderful keynote address from Governor Barbour, as well as a special guest later this morning. But to kick us off, I wanted to welcome our sponsor for the event. And one of the most amazing things that's happened over the last year is that this is an issue that's supported by corporations, by individuals, by foundations. And it's no longer just institutions on, quote, the left, but it's institutions in the middle and leaders from the right who are all putting skin in the game so that their resources are supporting all of our work. So I want to introduce the Federal Government Relations Director for Walmart, Jana Barresi, to come and say a few words. Thanks so much.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here today, and I'm glad to be here on behalf of Walmart. At Walmart, we think that immigration reform is an important issue to address. We applaud the efforts by the bipartisan group of senators in the Gang of Eight, the group of House members, and the administration. As the nation's largest retailer and employer, we have over 4,000 locations across the country providing products and services to 140 million customers each week. We are committed to working with all interested parties to address the important issue of immigration reform to ensure our economy continues to grow. So I'd like to thank the National Immigration Forum for hosting this fly-in, and thank all of you participants for your time and commitment to keeping a comprehensive approach to immigration reform a priority. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day.
Thank you so much. Now we've had not only institutions like Walmart, but we've also been able to enjoy the partnership of an incredible amount of organizations across the country who have helped make this event so special. One of those organizations is Forward.us. And our next speaker has been active with their network, and Forward.us has joined institutions like the Partnership for New American Economy, the National Hispanic Christian Leadership Conference, the National Association of Evangelicals, Sojourners, and so many others as members of our host committee. But Jesus Loya has an incredible story, and I'm not going to tell it for him because he is himself, and he's a leader in his own right. But it is a story that I think grounds why we're here, but also why we need to fix an immigration system that meets the needs of our 21st century. So Jesus is the manager of investment and operations at Park City Angel Network in Utah. And he's just been an incredible leader, but he also has a history on this issue that I think really sheds light, again, on the needs for reform. Jesus.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jesus Loya. I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm happy to be here. I graduated from the University of Utah with an honors degree in electrical engineering. I also earned an MBA and a master's in electrical and computer engineering. And now I manage a group of 74 private investors, we focused in early stage venture capital. I'm also a single father. I have an 8-year-old boy. And my American story is one of hard work and perseverance, but it's not unique. And I want to share with you what it was like to navigate through the complex world of living, or both, living in the shadows and being granted opportunities to fulfill my dreams. I feel compelled to share it on behalf of the million of inspiring young Americans like me who want to give back to the only country that we know and we love. I came to the United States from Mexico as a child. I was placed in a lower grade because when I first came here, I didn't speak English. And I took this as a challenge. And after 3 months, I was able to skip a grade and graduate high school at the age of 16, while working 2 jobs to support myself and pay the bills. After high school, I wanted to join the Marines. And I'll never forget the day when my dreams of serving this country were shattered by a call that I received from my recruitment officer. I was told that I could not join and serve this country because my Social Security was invalid. It was then when I realized that my options in this country were limited. Unable to serve my country, unable to go to college, and I felt completely powerless about in determining my future. In 2002, the Utah State Legislature passed a bill called the HB 144, allowing people like me to be eligible for in-state tuition. By that time, I had saved about $25,000 to pay for my first 3 years of school. And that's when I started going to the University of Utah to pursue a dream that I had as a child of becoming an engineer. My son was born while I was studying, and I had to drop out of college so I can provide and take care of him. But as a father, I knew that I wanted to provide a better future for him. So I went back to school and finished my degree in 2010. That same year, I watched with great anticipation and hope as the U.S. Congress debated my future. I was heartbroken that the DREAM Act didn't pass. But I didn't let it stop me. I continued my education, and within 21 months, I went back to school and received my advanced STEM degree and an MBA. I now work in venture capital. I love what I do. Every day, I facilitate the dreams of entrepreneurs who are building amazing technology, are creating jobs in the private sector, and are contributing to the economy. One company that I'm particularly proud of, it's a company that over the last 15 months has been able to hire 17 people, and they have plans to add 9 more jobs by the end of this year. I consider myself as an American, but on paper, I am not. I have 2 STEM degrees and an MBA. I've been paying taxes since I started working back in 1998. My son and my sister, they're U.S. citizens. My parents and my 2 other sisters, they have their green cards. I currently have a work permit, and I'm waiting for a USCIS to give me an answer on my EB-2 petition. But yet, my future in this country is still unclear because of the outdated immigration system that we have. And that's why I'm here in Washington, D.C. Because I'm not going to sit on the sidelines. And in Utah, back in Utah, I'm very active with Forward US and the Dream Is Now campaign, so that we can get more people like me, to tell their stories, and we can also get people to continue to take an action and press our members of Congress to take an action on this issue and finally pass an immigration reform that is long overdue, and we need so bad. Whether it's in the eyes of my son or in the business plan of an entrepreneur that I'm advising, America is full of hope and promise, and I believe that comprehensive immigration reform is necessary to solidify this promise. I hope all of you join me and make sure that it happens. Thank you all for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jesus. And I want to just underscore what Jesus has just done. He shared his story. So many of us here today are advocating for our coworkers, our friends, our families, and that's hard. But to be up here and to advocate for yourself and for your family takes a special kind of courage. And so I really want to thank you again. Please. And again, I just want to thank the hosts, our co-hosts for this event, Business Forward, Americans for Tax Reform, Sojourners, the Coalition for the Conference of Western Attorneys General, Forward.us, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the National Hispanic Christian Leadership Conference, the National Association of Evangelicals, and then finally the Partnership for a New American Economy. And again, thank you very much for helping make today so special and such an important moment. Our next speaker, we all know. We all know as the founder of one of the most important and critical companies that has graced our economy. And that's Steve Case, the founder of AOL. He's also now the chairman and CEO of Revolution. But over the last year, I've gotten to know Steve as a fearless advocate for the right thing. And yes, selfishly, the right thing is immigration reform. But before we got to know him on immigration reform, I followed Steve from afar as he was doing work on the Jobs Act, and just got to know his philosophy of making sure that our economy is moving forward and that all people are treated justly and fairly. And Steve has just been an incredible friend and ally of the organization, and I think all of our work. And it's just a great, great honor to have Steve here to introduce our keynote speaker. Thank you, Steve.
Good morning, and thank you, Ali, who's sort of become the Muhammad Ali of immigration reform, fighting the battle and being quick on his feet and wise, recognizing these. Occasionally you have a knockout punch and you end the fight early, but most of the time it goes the full distance, and that's likely in this case as well. So having that perspective, I think, is important. I remember the first time I attended a Bibles, Badges, and Business conference, I think it was last fall. I was really impressed by the passion and the momentum that was building. At the time, I think most people thought the idea of comprehensive immigration reform, the probability of it was so remote. It's almost like, why are these people kind of spending time on it? The progress that's been made over the past year really is remarkable. The momentum is very strong, and it's frankly the way politics should work. Identifying an important strategic issue that is really critical to the future of the nation, building bipartisan support to really focus on the issue, having a process such as the Gang of Eight in the Senate, working together in a bipartisan way to craft a complicated, complex a package of legislation, then having it go through the Judiciary Committee with the leadership of Senator Leahy, where 300 amendments were considered, 100 of them were adopted, so it was a thoughtful and inclusive process. The White House and the President, even yesterday, kind of shining a spotlight on the issue, but also being wise enough to stand aside and let the folks in Congress work on the details of the legislation. And then yesterday in the afternoon, when the Senate voted to move forward. But as Ali said at the beginning, this is really, in some ways, the end of the beginning, because there's still a lot of work to be done, and that's why it's great that you all came to town to make sure your voices are heard and people do recognize why this is so strategically important. Some people look at this through the prism of politics and why they should make different decisions, which is a factor, obviously. Some people look at it through the prism of morality and sort of why we should bring people out of the shadows and make them part of our society, make them part of our economy. Some people look at it through the prism of security. How do we make sure we have a safe and secure nation? And some people look at it through the prism of economics. All of those are fair ways to look at this. The one in particular that I'm focused on is the economic prism. How do we make sure we remain the most entrepreneurial nation in the world? We're not the leading economy by accident. It was the work of entrepreneurs who created not just companies, but entire industries that powered America into its leadership position. That's why we're the leader of the free world. That's because we have this strong economy. But we're at risk if we don't continue to make investments in entrepreneurship, encourage startups, and particularly win what is now a global battle for talent. We've got to make sure the best and brightest come here, not just to get educations, but stay here to start companies or join companies here. Our immigration policy as it relates to talent would be comparable to if we recruited people from, say, China to come attend our Naval Academy, taught them our naval strategy, and then kicked them out, forcing them to go back to China to join the Chinese Navy. Nobody would think that makes sense, but that's essentially what we're doing when we bring people over here, give them great education, PhDs and masters and so forth, and then all too often, kind of kick them out. So that is only one component of this broader debate, but it is an important component if we're going to remain the most entrepreneurial nation. We're going to continue to have the robust economy. If we want to get job creation going and get unemployment down, the place to focus is on startups. The Kauffman Foundation research says that 40 million jobs have been created over the last 3 decades by young, high-growth startups. So we want to start boosting job creation, the place to focus startups. We want to get our economic growth rate up from 2% to something more like 3 or 4%. The place to focus is on startups, and the link between immigrants and startups is undeniable. About half of the successful technology companies were started by immigrants. Over 40% of our Fortune 500 companies, some of our greatest kind of companies, the pride of the nation, were started by either immigrants or children of immigrants. So this really, while important to understand politically, while important to understand morally, while important to understand from a security standpoint, it's also important to understand it from an economic vantage point. I think that's a message as you talk to people that you should carry, in addition to, obviously, as Ali said, your own particular story. So I think we have made good progress. I think it's going to be a long, hot summer. I've lived in Washington now for 30 years, and the summers get a little bit hot and humid, sometimes a little bit steamy outside. Well, they're going to be kind of hot inside as well as people work, hopefully in a collaborative way, to try to craft get this to the finish line. I personally am optimistic that the Senate, while there will be vigorous debate and a lot of different issues and a lot of different amendments introduced, I think they likely are on a path to get this kind of voted on in early July. And I personally believe the goal of trying to get 70 votes in the Senate is the right goal. It will require some additional compromises to get that, but I do think that's an important goal. It's not going to be easy. Some would say it may not even be possible, but I think creating that kind of momentum coming out of the Senate is very strong. And then this battle obviously shifts to the House and their own process, which likely will be kind of dealing with things and with different kinds of different components of legislation, and getting enough of those passed so then it can go into conference, and hopefully the Senate and the House can put together a comprehensive immigration bill that is close to what the Gang of Eight has, which I think is a terrific piece of legislation that can be signed by the President by the end of the summer. But it's not going to happen automatically. It's going to require the work that you're doing and many other people are doing all around the country. It also will require people who aren't able to physically come to D.C. to make sure their voices are heard. That's why things like the March for Innovation, other ways to kind of get people mobilized all around the country are very important. So this really is the beginning of what's going to be a challenging process, but I'm confident that we can get this done. I don't think there has been a better moment to get it done in the past decade. I don't believe there will be another better moment in the next decade. So this is the summer to get this done. And one person who's going to be helpful in getting this done, indeed, I think essential to getting this done, is who I'm now going to introduce, which is Governor Haley Barbour, who I've known for over 20 years. He has been a leader in the D.C. world for a long period of time, and he obviously is a strongly partisan Republican. He even chaired the Republican Party. What I love about him, and so many respect about him, is he's a pragmatic politician who just focuses on trying to get stuff done. And while he comes in with a particular bias, as everybody does, he's trying to figure out how to get to a yes and get people working together in a collaborative way. And we need more of that here in Washington. And he also demonstrated to all of us all around the country what a great leader he is, particularly after Katrina, where that whole region of the country, when he was governor of Mississippi, was really under siege. And it was interesting. My wife at the time was chairing a council on service and civic participation for President Bush, and she went down post-Katrina, and said it was startling to see what happened when you left Louisiana and drove across the border into Mississippi. It was like two different worlds. And the reason Mississippi was so much stronger and the recovery was so much faster was for one reason only, which is the leadership of Haley Barbour. And that kind of leadership is what we need of all our elected officials, and having him play such an active role on immigration, including with the bipartisan Policy Center, is really terrific. So please join me in welcoming a friend of all of us who care about immigration, Governor Haley Barbour.
Steve, thank you. And, I appreciate the generous introduction. I appreciate all the things you said beforehand, some of which I'm going to try not to repeat verbatim. Let me just say, first of all, I was RNC chairman for 4 years, proud of it, Republican governor, chairman of the Republican Governors Association. But I'm here today to talk to you in a very bipartisan way. In fact, I co-chair the Bipartisan Policy Center's Immigration Reform Task Force. And that includes Condi Rice, who was Secretary of State in the Republican administration, Mike Chertoff, who ran Homeland Security, responsible for border security in the Bush administration, Al Cardenas. Al is the president of the American Conservative Union. Some of you may know. John Shadegg, former congressman from Arizona, a frontline state in this issue. But also Ed Rendell, the former Democrat governor of Pennsylvania. We have Henry Cisneros, the former mayor of San Antonio, Secretary of HUD. Hilda Solis, who was Secretary of Labor in this Obama administration. It's a genuinely bipartisan issue. And let me just say, we ought to look at it through the lens of good policy, not what's good politics. I mean, too much time is spent by the news media saying politically Republicans need to do something about immigration reform because they got hurt so badly on the issue in the campaign last time. Well, I used to work for Ronald Reagan. That's pretty heady stuff for a boy from Yazoo City, Mississippi. But I was head of the political office under Reagan in his second term. And Reagan used to say, never forget, at the end of the day, good policy is good politics. Good policy is good politics. If you'll be for what's good policy, you're going to get good results, Steve, right? And good results is what people want out of their elected officials, what they want out of their government. And for me, good policy is comprehensive immigration reform. Steve mentioned Katrina. My state was, we bore the brunt of the worst natural disaster in American history. The Mississippi Gulf Coast was obliterated. We had 64,000 homes that were uninhabitable in a population of 350,000 people. So about half of all the homes down there couldn't be lived in. In history, the most homes ever built in the three counties on the Mississippi Gulf Coast in a year is 1,800. And we had 64,000 to replace. And this was the first time immigration ever entered my mind as a public policy issue, because in Mississippi we had very little immigration. In the 2000 census, just over 1% of the population was Hispanic. Well, the Spanish-speaking labor that came into the coast after the storm was indispensable. I hate to think where Mississippi would have been had they not come, because the guy that you would have called to get to build your house back was building his house back. And that was just the fact of the matter, that we had an incredible need for labor because of displaced population. I'm very proud of the fact that by the end of the school year, the hurricane happened the end of August, the first week of school. By the end of the school year, 94% of the students on the Mississippi Gulf Coast were back in school in their home county. But for the first few weeks and months, there was enormous displacement. And we were saved by Spanish speakers, and I recognize some of them probably not here legally, who slept in the bed of the pickup truck or in a tent, who came to work and to help our people get back on their feet. That's what really piqued my interest in this. And when I watched the national immigration reform debate in the year or two after Katrina was in 2005, and of course the immigration bill was up in the Bush administration the next couple of years, it made me focus on something that Steve Case said a while ago. We are in a global battle for talent. America's in a global battle for capital and labor. As I look at GDP growth, which in this administration has been about 2%. The best year of this administration was 2.4%. And I think about my years in the White House, the economy after the recession of 1980, 81, 82, the economy grew 4.5%, 7.4%, and 4.1% in the first 3 years after the recession. After this recession, we grew 2.4, 1.8, 2.1. And I will suggest to you one of the reasons, they're not the only reason by far, one of the reasons is our labor force is not increasing in size. That actually more people lost their jobs in the recession than have recovered. But one of the reasons is we don't have enough labor for some of the jobs that we have. And if we're going to get GDP back up to 4% or 3.5%, which is the average for the last 40 years, we got to have more labor. And Steve is obviously right. The most obvious talent that we want and need in this country are the people who come here on H-1B visas, high-skilled labor, and it's some wonderful stories. Jesus is a great example of it. You know, I used to say that any kid that got a PhD from engineering at Mississippi State University ought to staple a green card to their diploma. And everybody here, I think, understands that and agrees with that. You know, we take that kid today we'd make him go home. He goes home, starts a business in Mumbai that employs 800 people. If we'd have let him, he'd have rather than start a business in Memphis that employed 800 people. And some people are starting to learn that. But that's not the only labor issue in immigration reform. It is obvious, it is important, it is critical that it be done right for our technology industries, but it's more than that. You know, I'll never forget the first month I was governor of Mississippi in 2004. A Mississippi State professor, which is our engineering school, said, you know, Governor, our businesses in Mississippi got three choices. They can innovate, they can immigrate, or they can evaporate. Which is a very interesting way of saying you can either innovate to become more productive so you can stay competitive in the global marketplace, or you're either going to go to where they have cheaper labor, or you're just going to spend your capital down till you throw in the towel. And innovation is the key for productivity increases. We don't get more productive by making people work harder. We do it by making people work smarter or allowing people to work smarter and getting good labor that we can then teach how to deploy and use the technologies of today. That technological advancement requires good labor. And more in the United States, we have people who are not working. I mean, the 13% increase in Social Security disability in this country, just enormous increases by historical standards over just a few years. Unemployment very high, people dropping out of the workforce. I would tell you that we not only need labor for H-1B high skill, but also for essential jobs that are not nearly as high skilled. The most obvious being agriculture. You wouldn't think it. Cotton is not the biggest agricultural commodity in my state. Chickens, poultry is the biggest agricultural commodity. We sell $2.5 billion worth of broilers every year. And if you go to a chicken processing plant in Mississippi, you cannot find anybody who speaks English as their native tongue. Most of them still speak only Spanish, some of them Spanish and English, but they're all immigrants. They came here for work, and they're doing work, frankly, that most people don't want to do. It is a literal fact that we have a program in our correction system where we let inmates who've got a high enough rating for being trustworthy, we let them actually go out and work for designated employers. We have one of our prisons over near a chicken processing area. The inmates get paid, so they usually like to work. Well, they go to the chicken plant and they work about 2 days, and they'd rather be in the penitentiary than work. I mean, literally, they'd rather be in the penitentiary than covered with feathers and blood and guts and Lord knows what else. And we need that labor. I can't tell you how many hundred families in Mississippi, hundreds of families, that raise chickens. But those chickens are not worth anything if there's nobody who can process them. So that's just a tiny microscopic view. They say 70% of the labor, the farm labor in California, is here illegally. 70%, 50%, whatever the percentage. Let's don't forget, California is the #1 agricultural producing state in America. And most of the people there are not there legally. We got to change that. We've got to have an ag visa system that works. We have an ag visa system now. In California, at least, 4% of ag workers are on that kind of visa because it is so cumbersome and unwieldy. So we need labor for a variety of reasons. So to me, the biggest issue about immigration reform from a policy perspective is helping grow our economy. Having the kind of economic growth so that my kids and grandkids can enjoy the same kind of economic opportunities that I did, having grown up in a little small town in the Deep South, where in our country anybody can go anywhere. I do want to mention one other thing, and I think is going to be enormously important, and probably to a lot of your constituents, and that's border security. I was in the White House in 1986 when we did immigration reform. And I remember well, and Al Simpson and I have had the chance to talk about this on numerous occasions. What was the #1 promise that Congress made to the American people when they did immigration reform, when we passed the bill? We were going to secure the border. That was the first part of the deal. We were going to secure the border, and we literally were going to give amnesty to 4 million people who were here. Literally amnesty. Didn't have to do anything. Well, we gave the amnesty, didn't secure the border. So there is a lot of misgiving in our country, if not distrust, about whether the government's going to actually secure the border. And I think as we go through here, we need to be cognizant of that we need to give your constituents confidence that when this is all said and done, that we're going to have 11 million or some portion of 11 million people who are going to come out of the shadows, who are going to pay their taxes, who are going to live up to rigorous requirements if they want to go to citizenship, and even some pretty good requirements to get a green card, starting a process with some sort of legalization, but that when we get to the end of the day, the average American has got to believe we're not ever going through this again. That we are going to have a secure border and we're going to be able to deal with visas. As many of you probably know, 30 to 40% of the people in the United States illegally came here legally on a visa and just overstayed their visa, and that we have never had a system under a Republican administration or a Democrat administration to prevent that. And people have to believe that border security is in the forefront. And Becky, I will say one of the things that interested me about the Bipartisan Policy Center's task force, Ed Rendell, who was the original co-chairman with me, emphatically said to me on the front end, we Democrats are going to support border security, period. We understand that has to be part of the deal. I think for my constituents, if we believe if we do nothing, if nothing passes, if we do nothing, 10 years from now, there'll be another 10 million illegal immigrants here that come in the next 10 years. That immigration reform is critical to get border security, which is critical to having us never again unintentionally allow millions of people to come here. That is going to be very important for your constituents to recognize and believe. And I will tell you, I think that is very doable. I think that is very doable. I think that is in the hearts and souls of the guys that are trying to pass this, the men and women who are trying to pass this. The Gang of Eight bill, I'm like Steve, and I think it is a great starting place, and I think it's good legislation, period. But I think we all got to realize this is a process that we're going to, as Ollie said, start today on the Senate floor. I don't know how it'll be amended, how it'll not be amended, but then we're going to go to the House and probably have a very different process. The House is likely to come at this from a different way. Instead of one big comprehensive bill, they seem to be planning to have a series of bills, and at the end of that series of bills, the House is allowed under their rules to have what they call engrossment. That is, that you can take a number of bills that are related and roll them up into one bill and conference that with the Senate. So I don't want those of you who are for comprehensive immigration reform to be alarmed when the House starts taking up little bills, because I see that, and I believe the leadership's plan is after they get through, they think they can pass more that way, and then they'll roll it up and they'll conference it with the Senate bill. I don't know exactly how it's going to turn out. I think Steve Case is dead right. This is the best chance we're going to have for another decade to get comprehensive immigration reform. And I think if we don't get comprehensive immigration reform for another 10 years, that we're going to have problems that are twice as big or more than the problems we got now. If you want a solution to illegal immigration, it's immigration reform. If you want to do something to secure the border, this is the process to get it done. If you want to make sure that we have the talent, labor that we need in our country so that we can have the kind of economic growth that we became accustomed to over the last 25 or 50 years, immigration reform is absolutely part of that process. And the last thing is, I can't help but close by saying my great-grandfather came here from Ireland, a little older than you, Jesus, but came here as a teenager, the seventh of 7 brothers, fleeing the potato famine, Irish Protestant, Huguenot, and he came here to work. And to me, that's one of the things that is so essential about the history of America. People came here to work. People didn't come here because this was a place where they were going to be given prosperity, but because they're going to be given an opportunity to make the most out of their lives that they could make. And that is so true of the vast majority of our immigrant population. That's why you hear success stories like Steve was talking about, that 40% of the Fortune 500 were formed by immigrants or the children of immigrants. And that inures to the benefit of every one of us, both for what they create in the way of jobs and economic growth and prosperity, But I will say to you, by what they give us in the way of example, I think about my own children, both of whom have been successful. I'm very proud of them. But I worried about them in high school and college. They never had to sacrifice for anything. You know, middle class kids grow up with a pretty dang easy life in America. And one of the things that they can see are others who work like Jesus and provide something besides material benefit, but also provide an example of what you can do. And that's what makes us different. That's what is the shining city on the hill's all about. Reagan used to say, and when he would get cranked up on the Blame America First crowd, as Gene Kirkpatrick used to call it, he'd say, yeah, when the Blame America First crowd gets too loud, he said, what you need to do is apply the Gates test. I said, Mr. President, what's the Gates test? He said, well, the Gates test. He said, drop all the gates everywhere in the world and see which way everybody runs. They all run to America. And that's still the case. If you apply the Gates test, people run to America. That's something we ought to be proud of, happy for, and we ought to figure out how we make that work the right way. That's what immigration reform at the end of the day is all about. We don't ever want America to fail the Gates test. We always want it to be the place where everybody wants to come. We just got to have a system that makes it work better than it's worked for the last few years. Thank you for what you're doing. Please know this is not going to be one in Washington. This is going to be one in your district and in your state. I'm tickled you're here. Thank you for meeting with whoever you're going to meet with. But where they really need to see is at town hall meetings in the district. They need to see your members standing up for immigration reform. They need to see your members making plain if we want to secure the border, this is the process we have to go through. At the end of the day, that's where this is going to be won. And I hope that y'all will all, whether you're business or badges or Bibles, whichever of that group or all three, some of you represent, God bless you. That's what we want to make sure you do at home, is that as you take this message home to your district. Thank you all very much. I'm going to slip out.
Okay.
Great to see you. Thank you. Thanks, Dave. Excuse me.
Thank you, Governor Barbour. And this has been a great opportunity not only to hear from Steve and others, but also from Governor Barbour. And to introduce our kind of unannounced guest, I want to bring up one of our newest board members of the National Immigration Forum, Eddie Aldretti, who is the Senior Vice President at International Bank of Commerce in Texas. Eddie.
Thank all of you. Some of us are here today from Washington and some of us are here from throughout the country. And we all gather today to carry a strong message forward over to the Capitol that we need and will pass immigration reform. It takes unity and strength, and we can't move forward unless we move together. And in any battle, it takes a tip of the spear to be able to carry that torch forward and help achieve that progress. We have that tip of the spear and a true champion here to share a few words with us today. It takes skill and diplomacy to not only produce a bipartisan immigration reform bill, but to keep that coalition together and to keep building on that success. And I think we saw some of that success yesterday. And thanks to the efforts of Senator Schumer, we saw great success yesterday on the Senate, and we hope to continue seeing that success. But while he continues the fight in the Senate, it's up to the rest of us to keep the fight on back home. I came in from Texas. I see Gordon Kwan from Texas and a few other friends here from other parts of the country. And it's critical that we continue to fight on a dual process, both at home, to make sure that our own elected officials are moving forward. So please help me welcome our tip of the spear and a true immigration reform champion, Senator Chuck Schumer.
Well, thank you, Mr. Aldretti. It's great to be here. I was unannounced. I'll be quick because we got a lot to do, as you can imagine, but I wanted to be here personally to thank Bibles, Badges, and Business for doing the great work you're doing, to thank my good friend Ali Noorani, who has been so involved in this, and all of you. And look, I don't have to tell you what is motivating me to move this bill forward, because I love America. And, you know, I want America to stay number one. I don't know, for those of you who took math, it's an axiom for me, not a postulate. A postulate you can prove, you know. Axioms are just articles of faith. Belief in God is sort of an axiom in mathematical terms. It's just there. You can't prove it. It's just there. Well, when they say two parallel lines never meet, you know, that's an axiom. Okay. Anyway, whatever that's worth. An axiom for me is I want to see our country stay number one. And if I had to think of 3 or 4 things that will do that, one of them is immigration reform. And in a certain sense, it's the easiest one to do because it does not really involve a fight fundamentally over money. If you say rebuilding our infrastructure or improving our education system, you're going to have Democrats and Republicans fighting about money as well as other issues. On this one, at least we don't have a money issue because, as you know, we can pay for our entire bill with the money that's generated by the bill itself. And so I've pushed really hard to get this done, and I want to give a huge amount of credit to my fellow 7 gang members. For you, if you were to watch us in those meetings, you did get to watch us in the Judiciary Committee, where Chairman Leahy did a great job. But if you get to watch us if you were to watch us in those meetings, you would see that people run the spectrum. We have some of the most liberal members of the Senate and some of the most conservative members of the Senate, but everybody reaching towards one another to try and come up with common ground. It would restore some of your faith in government. It was really some beautiful moments that I'll never forget, whatever happens with this bill. But because we worked so hard and we met in the middle, I think we really have a fine, balanced product. I said after the bill was produced that we built a sturdy ship, but now the voyage through the storm-tossed seas begins. We finished the first leg of our voyage, the Judiciary Committee, and that went very well. We showed people that we had an open process. We showed people who we know were vehemently opposed to our bill that they'd have a chance to amend it. And probably most importantly, our Gang of 8, or at least the 4 of us who were on Judiciary, stuck together. Jeff Flake and Lindsey Graham took some tough votes and got some flack from the right. Dick Durbin and I took some tough votes and got some flack from the left. But we held together, and now we go to the floor. Yesterday's vote was a great first start, but no one should misinterpret that to mean we're home. We're not. And that's why we need you. We still have a lot of work to do. There are 5 Republicans committed to this bill. That's it. And even if every Democrat were to vote for it, we still would not be at 60. Now, I believe we'll get to 60, but as I mentioned before, the more votes we get, the better. And that's where you come in. You have links to many on the Republican side, and I believe there are a group on the Republican side who will never vote for immigration reform. We pretty much know who they are. But then there's a whole bunch who would like to vote for the bill. And they're getting a lot of pressure from some in their constituencies to vote no. And you are our antidote to that. We really need you. Ali has the lists, your group has the lists of the people we can get. And we need you and your constituencies. If you're a pastor of a church or head of an evangelical organization, we need your church members who normally don't get involved in issues like this and normally don't call about issues like this to flood the offices with phone calls. If you're a member of a business, We need you to constantly talk to the senators of the businesses in which you have employees and get those employees to call. And if you're members of a law enforcement group, the same. But we really need to work. We still don't have 60. I think we'll get there. But the more votes we get, the better the chance is for passage. Because I don't want to pass a bill in the Senate and then not pass a bill in the House. And if we can show that close to a majority of Democrats, clearly, but close to a majority of Republicans will vote for this bill, it will help us dramatically in the House. Because if anything, the forces against immigration on the Republican side are stronger in the House than in the Senate. Now, we have a lot of forces on our side, many of which are you. Even, the conservative media is divided. Sean Hannity has come out for the bill. Wall Street Journal editorial page has done some very positive editorials for the bill. But there are a lot of people, if you read these things as I do, who are against it. And so you're our antidote. We need you to work. Now, one final point. What kind of compromises can be made to get more votes? Well, I'm willing to listen to everything, and this is a bipartisan operation. But there are certain core principles that we can't give up. And the one that's most in play right now is a trigger. Our side of the aisle believes strongly in a pathway to citizenship. We also believe we should secure the border. But we cannot accept triggers that, in a certain way, in many ways, will block the path to citizenship. We've come up with triggers that require border stuff to be put in place that will make the border more secure, but they're specific and achievable. If they are if they're too vague, if they're too flexible, we can't accept those triggers. And I bring that up because there's some talk about the Cornyn Amendment. The Cornyn Amendment was voted down in committee with Lindsey Graham and Jeff Flake voting against it. The triggers in that bill are unacceptable because they don't meet the standards. They could very well block any path to citizenship by circumstances out of the control of the confines of the bill. So we can't accept the Cornyn Amendment. We'll accept things that work. We'll accept things that strengthen border security. We'll certainly look at all the other amendments that are there. But I wanted to let people know that that particular amendment has already been voted down, and you should tell the people you're lobbying that that is not going to be the way to solve this problem. There will be others, but that is not it. And that would be very helpful if you would do that as well. So that's the bottom line. The future of our country depends on this. I believe two things. First, I believe our system is so broken. We turn people away who would create jobs, and we let people cross the border or stay in the country who take jobs away from Americans. It's backward. And second, the bill's fundamental premise is that Americans will accept common sense, balanced, fair solutions to both future legal immigration and the 11 million who are here illegally, if and only if they believe that we will stop future waves of illegal immigration. And we've done that in the bill. So it meets what America wants. Every poll shows that's the case in blue states, purple states, red states. But because of the way our politics works, there is a hard cry from many on the hard right who are saying, don't vote for this bill. Most of you come from conservative backgrounds, and you're our answer. I don't want to be too dramatic, but in certain senses, the future of this country is in your hands. So I would urge you to take that extra step. Don't just make one phone call, make 4 or 5. Keep in touch with the people you're talking to. Make sure your constituencies, the millions of people that are represented in this room, let their senators know. And if we get a good, strong, robust bill out of the Senate, we will pass the bill in the House and have it on the President's desk this year. I truly believe that. So thank you for your good work. Thank you for caring about the country. I know that just about for every one of you in this room, you may have some self-interest in this, but it's not close to your interest like mine in the good of the country, we're close. We're close. And you can help bring us over the goal line, so thanks for your good work.
Great, thank you, Senator Schumer. Our next speaker wears a badge. Sheriff Mark Curran from Lake County, Illinois, has been a great partner in the work so far and just been a relentless advocate, both in Illinois, across the country, and here in D.C. Sheriff Curran, thank you so much for making the trip.
Thank you all for being here. My name is Mark Curran. I'm the Sheriff of Lake County, Illinois, which is up north of Chicago, about 750,000 people, 21% Hispanic. And I think that the first time Ali reached out to me, he was intrigued by my story. I am a Republican. I'm very conservative on social issues, what have you. But I was on one side of the immigration issue. I was somebody that believed in mass deportations, believed in strengthening my office to work with the federal government when President Bush was in power in any way possible to strengthen the federal, state, local partnership in deportations. And ultimately, as a law enforcement official, I'm also a person of faith. My positions led to a conversation with Cardinal George, who was the head of the United States Council for Catholic Bishops, USCCB, and he talked to me a little bit about the fact that if you're pro-life, there's dignity in human beings, and the way you're speaking does not recognize that fact. If you believe in a nuclear family with a mother and a father, well, our positions right now in terms of immigration are arbitrarily breaking up nuclear families, families that have been intact and been in this country for a long period of time. Your words are not consistent with your faith. There's dignity in human beings. You shouldn't be talking about human beings in the way that you're speaking. And ultimately, I received clarity on that, and clarity on the faith perspective led to clarity also from a law enforcement perspective. When I looked at our immigration system, I recognized how our broken immigration system was destroying community policing. Community policing is at the absolute heart of what makes a community safe. We don't have enough boots on the ground to keep you safe. We have to work with the people that live in the neighborhoods. They have to feel comfortable to be able to come up and talk to their police officer. When they see a squad rounding the corner, you don't want people running. You don't solve crimes that way. You don't ensure safety of the larger community. We're at a time now, especially in Illinois, where we're 50th in pension funding and essentially at the bottom in most economic categories, where we have to prioritize resources. And ultimately, community policing is the key to where we go and is the key to safer communities. We also look at what happened in terms of our incarceration problem. I run a jail, approximately 1,000 people incarcerated on a daily basis, 20% of those undocumented. That's not because they did the worst of all offenses. It's because they come in without papers and a hold is put on them. It's not put on other people that would have committed a similar or lesser offense. Very unfortunate in terms of the drain on resources. Also, from a law enforcement perspective, we cannot forget the fact that although we wear a badge, we are human beings. And when we are out there enforcing these laws and knowing that our system is broken, it hurts our hearts. And it makes us broken as we come home to our families and we come home to our neighbors. So for so many reasons, law enforcement, faith, what have you, that we absolutely have to act now. And I, as a person that is strongly committed to the ideals of the Republican Party, I realize that there's language out there, and we talked about radio show hosts that don't recognize the fact that these people came under a system where they wanted to provide for their families. They came at a time where clearly there were two sets of signs at the border. One said, "Do not enter," but the other said, "Help wanted." At a time when we reproduce below 2.0 and we desperately need this labor. Turn off people that talk about our neighbors in a way that is not consistent with the way we are as Americans, the way we are as people of faith. Pray for them, that their hearts are softened, and when their hearts are softened, like me, they will see the truth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheriff. And our final speaker is with the National Hispanic Christian Leadership Conference. Carlos Moran and all of his colleagues and allies across the country have been such a big part of the work, and the evangelical community overall has just been such a great partner. So, Carlos, thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. 50 years ago, this summer, Martin Luther King led a historic and a catalytic march on Washington, D.C. The march amplified the call for freedom not just for Americans, African Americans, but for all Americans. This summer, 50 years after that historic march, our nation can once again heed to this clarion call, or turn the proverbial deaf ear to the cries of millions calling for a just solution to the immigration crisis. Accordingly, history will record this summer as one where, as Reverend Samuel Rodriguez describes, Republicans and Democrats in Congress exhibit prophetic courage, or one where immigration reform dies on the altar of pathetic expediency. For today, we stand closer than ever before for passing legislation that will secure our borders, strengthen our communities, affirm our values, and provide a reconciliatory prescription for a nation divided by political partisanship. Quoting Dr. King, as it pertains to immigration reform this summer, and this hour can best be captured in the following thought: the fierce urgency of now. Now is the time for reform. My friends, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to reconcile the message with the march. Now is the time to respect the God-given dignity of every person. Now is the time to protect the unity of the immediate family. It is now that we need to respect the rule of law, guarantee secure national borders, and of course, ensure fairness to taxpayers. Let us sound the voice to establish a path toward legal status and or citizenship for those who qualify and who wish to become permanent residents of this country, with which all of us urgently pray. God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. That's not bad. It's 10:01 a.m. I really, again, want to thank everybody on the host committee, the different organizations, the range of speakers. Just an incredibly powerful morning, and we have an incredibly large amount of work to do today. So with that, 2 words of advice. Drink a lot of water. It's hot out there. And number 2, have fun. And thank you very much.